and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. Before I dive into today's show, I want to apologize now. There's some construction going on, and they're doing some water blasting and cleaning stuff in the street. Just get that really loud noise in the background. I would do my best to edit it out at the ends, but if you do hear some of that, just please know there's not a whole lot I can do, but you're so advised. Now, on today's show, I want to discuss a really complex emotional topic. Today, I'm going to talk about the impact of jealousy on role dynamics inside of our BDSM lifestyle. Jealousy can be really this powerful and disruptive force in any type of relationship, but its effects can be particularly pronounced in BDSM dynamics where roles and boundaries are so carefully negotiated. On today's show, we're going to explore how jealousy can influence the roles of dominants and submissives. We're going to define jealousy and understand it a bit more. We're going to look at the impacts, how they're crucial for maintaining a healthy dynamic, and why these things affect it. We're going to look at common triggers and how jealousy can shift the balance of power, and practical strategies for addressing these feelings constructively. And by gaining insight into these dynamics, we're going to be able to better equip to navigate the emotional challenges that come with maintaining really any fulfilling relationship, but also maintaining ourselves and our own mental stability and mental and emotional regulation. And that's really what's quite important about a lot of this, is because we do tend to forget that we have to have and be in a certain level of capacity for all of our daily operations, regardless if it's a dynamic or we're by ourselves. If we don't have the capacity, we're not functioning at our best. Let's keep that a little bit in mind as we move through. First, let's understand jealousy. Now, jealousy really is a complex emotion that goes beyond simple envy or insecurity, as often it's dismissed as. At its core, jealousy arises when we perceive a threat to something we hold dear, such as a relationship, our sense of worth, or our position within a dynamic. And it really is a mix of feelings: fear of loss, insecurity, sometimes even resentment. And this can be particularly intense inside of a lifestyle relationship, where roles and power dynamics add layers of emotional investment. The deeper we go, the more we trust, the closer we attach. So these feelings, if they manifest, can get more intense for some, not everyone, over time. Now, in BDSM, jealousy can become even more intricate due to the unique nature of the relationships that we tend to inhabit. When the roles are clearly defined, any shift or perceived threat can stir up some of these strong emotions and give us really visceral reactions. For instance, maybe a dominant might feel uneasy if their submissive is interacting with somebody else. That they are fearing that their control or their significance might be diminished. And similarly, a submissive might experience jealousy if their dom is showing more interest in somebody else, which can lead to feelings of being sidelined or even less valued. So, are there any real common triggers for jealousy? Well, there are a few, and I'm going to lay some out, but that by no means these few that I'm going to share with you all today, it doesn't mean that's the end of them. Everybody is triggered for different reasons. Everything can set somebody off for a different reason. So we need to keep that in mind. First, we have attention from others. When our partner engages with somebody new or some new interest in outside activities, this can spark this feeling of jealousy. This in particular, if these new interactions seem to take away from us, that what we're looking at is a loss of time and attention that we would usually receive. So we don't want to necessarily give that up. We don't want to lose that part of the relationship. We can also look at perceived imbalance in affection. If you notice that your partner seems to be directing more affection or attention towards somebody else, it can create these whole feelings of jealousy. And it can happen if you feel like you're not receiving the same level of care or focus you received in the beginning. Maybe their position of their job changed, or all of a sudden they have an issue with their family and they're spending more time at home. This too can stir up feelings of jealousy. What about involvement inside of other dynamics? Now, we know inside of the lifestyle, if we sometimes others, we get involved in polydynamics, or maybe not so much even polyamory, but we might just have a bottom or a top that we report to just for certain scenes, right? We need to keep that in mind. But all of a sudden, if we become involved in these other dynamics or exploring these other roles with somebody else, it can trigger jealousy. And this can be heightened if you feel that these new dynamics are affecting the balance of the relationship we are currently in, right? What about a change in our role dynamics? Any shift in the established roles or expectations within our dynamic can lead to jealousy. For instance, if the balance of power or attention changes, it stirs up any insecurities that might be lingering. And now we're contemplating what our place might be is inside of the relationship. What about communication gaps? Now here, sometimes jealousy can stem from misunderstandings or lack of communication. If there are gaps in how feelings and expectations are communicated, it can lead to assumptions and increased jealousy. Understanding these triggers and their impact can help in addressing jealousy more effectively. By recognizing what sets us off, maybe these feelings, and discussing them openly, you can work towards maintaining that balance and fulfilled dynamic without going through this process. Maybe when they're starting to stir, sit down with your partner, talk to them about it. They should be willing and open and to listen and understand, and if necessary, to provide some feedback to, help you nurture along so you don't spill into the gap of jealousy. Now, what's the next part of this? How can it maybe impact our role dynamics? Now, jealousy really can deeply affect the roles within a dynamic, and it can influence how doms and submissives interact with the experience of their relationship, and it can change how those interactions move going forward. So, pardon me, we're going to talk about how some of these play out psychologically for each role. So first I'm going to talk about here is jealousy and dominant roles. Now for dominance, jealousy often taps into our core fears about control or authority. When a dominant feels jealousy, it can trigger underlying insecurities about their worth or effectiveness in the relationship as the leader. This insecurity might come from concerns that their submissive's attention is shifting, or that the influence is being diminished by outside factors that we can't necessarily see or are being communicated to us. Now, psychologically, this can really create a heightened sense of possessiveness or a need to reassert one's dominance as a way to really reclaim a sense of control and stability. But this reaction can manifest in various ways. For example, a dominant might become more controlling or attempt to set stricter boundaries to reassert their position. They might express frustration or make demands to reaffirm their role, which can then lead to a power struggle or, more often than not, a tension within the dynamic itself. Now, if we understand these psychological drivers, it's going to help address the root causes of the jealousy and help us maybe find a better way to communicate and manage these feelings once we start experiencing them. But again, it is key that we start talking about these things with our partner. Now, if we have a partner that's going to be unresponsive to our feelings or our needs, then we may need to reassess the entire dynamic itself. You can't make somebody want to be with you, and if they're not validating how you feel or helping you understand them, well, again, you're going to have to really decide whether or not that's the dynamic for you. Now, what about jealousy and submissive roles? Submissives, on the other hand, might experience jealousy through a sense of inadequacy or maybe fear of being replaced. When a submissive feels that their dominant is paying more attention to others or showing affection elsewhere, it can lead to feelings of being undervalued or insignificant. And this emotional response is often tied to deep-seated need for validation or assurance of their own place within the dynamic. Now, what's interesting about this is a couple of weeks ago I had talked about what happens when dominants make mistakes. I wrote an article about this and their need to apologize. And it was more about some clients that I was working with where something happened, the dominants overreacted, and their need to then apologize. But the roles on the submissives, not so much into the jealousy realm, but what I'm trying to tie this to is when maybe paying attention and then how they feel undervalued, when they're not getting that attention, or if the dynamic changes, or maybe you are a polydom and you have multiple subs and you're showing more attention, that tension for that submissive can rise very quickly and very exponentially. And they're not going to understand how to navigate these problems unless you are willing to sit with them, talk with them, and explain where their purpose is, so they can healthily navigate these things and find the validation that they really need. Now, there are some psychological impacts, and if we're looking at the submissive side, this is a possibility where they may begin to question their own worth or their role stability. They might withdraw or become less responsive to commands or any orders within the dynamic. They might struggle with feelings of unimportance or even insecurity, and this emotional strain can impact their sense of safety and contentment within inside of the dynamic itself, which are crucial for keeping their role healthy and desired. You don't want to get to a point inside of that role where you are feeling that your submission is repugnant. At that point, you're going to lose definitely faith within yourself and definitely faith inside of the dynamic. But if you're addressing these feelings, and if you're looking at them, how are we going to address them? Well, you're going to have to go to the core of your feelings. And this is dominance. You're going to have to look at it by providing reassurance and maintaining open lines of communication and ensure that they feel valued and secure within the dynamic. But for submissives, you're going to have to start speaking up. You're going to have to... You can't feel inside of a dynamic, you should never feel that you don't have a voice. I hear a lot of old school and even some of the new school of thought, but at any given moment inside of a dynamic, everybody has the right to talk. And if you're feeling these things, this is a really powerful emotion that needs to be dealt with the moment it starts surfacing. So that way it doesn't grow and manifest and possibly derail the dynamic. Now, what about our role interactions here? The interplay of jealousy here between a dom and a sub can really lead to the shifts in how roles are expressed or even maintained. If doms are feeling more jealous, it might result for them being more rigid or controlling, right? And for subs, that might lead to them changing their behavior by being distant or less engaged. All of these things disrupt any balance that has been created and the harmony of the dynamic. When jealousy is not addressed, it really can create a power struggle or misalignment in how everybody expresses their roles. But maybe a sub's no longer going to react to a command. They're going to become defiant, and we're not going to know why. Or with the dominant, they're going to start clashing, and they're going to start trying to exert more control when they feel that maybe they're losing it. If we start understanding some of these psychological impacts between our roles, we can navigate these complex world of jealousy and how it manifests and work towards being emotionally healthier and happier, and then on top of that, balancing out our relationship. So what are some of these strategies here that help us address jealousy? Well, there's a few, and I want to lay these out for you. Sometimes it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but there's a reason why. If we are going to address jealousy inside of our dynamics, we have to understand that there are emotional undercurrents, and we have to actively be working to maintain the balance and trust inside of the dynamic almost on a daily basis the closer we are connected. First, we're going to talk about open communication. I talk about this until I'm blue in the face. I talk about it with my clients. I talk about it all the time. I write about it. There is a reason why all psychologists do this over and over. I really do apologize for the noise today, guys. It's usually not this loud, but today's just one of those days I didn't get around to recording earlier, and it's kind of taking its toll, so just bear with me. Anyways, open and honest communication here really does become this cornerstone of managing jealousy in a relationship. when jealousy arises, if we start to discuss these feelings openly rather than letting them fester, this approach here with these conversations, what we're looking at is being empathetic towards our partner. And we have to be willing to listen. We have to start by expressing ourselves using an I statement. We don't want to come across as we're accusing somebody else. You want to talk about saying, maybe I feel unsettled when I see interactions between you and somebody else, rather than, you don't want to say something to them like, you make me jealous every time you talk to somebody else. You did this. We're putting somebody on the defensive, and when we put people on the defensive inside of a discussion, we are going to create an argument, and they are going to feel attacked, and then at that point, the conversation is going to break down very quickly. We have to understand that we need to create a space where both of us are talking and sharing our thoughts without fear or judgment. We need to let one person talk. The other person should listen. When the first person is done, we should talk back to them and let them know, this is what I heard you say, or at least I believe I heard you say. Acknowledge your partner's feelings and then go from there. You should establish a routine for these discussions, especially if jealousy becomes a recurring theme here. If it gets to the point that it's something really affecting your dynamic, you may need to seek extra help outside of your dynamic to combat the problems that you might be facing with jealousy. The next thing, you need to set boundaries. Clear boundaries really become essential for managing jealousy and maintaining the balance we have inside of our dynamic. Boundaries aren't just about setting limits, but they define what each partner needs to feel secure and respected. You need to discuss and agree on what is acceptable in the terms of interactions with somebody else, maybe your time spent apart, or how your attention is divided. You have to remember what brought two of you together is that same thing that what you liked about your partner. We don't want to get with someone who, maybe they played soccer or they were an artist or they did bungee jumping, and we love that about them. We love that adventurous or creative spirit, and then we date them and we're like, no, mine, you can never leave. Well, that's not healthy. They had those interests before we met. We can't expect them to stop. Maybe curtail it because they want to spend more time with us, yes, or we're going to curtail our activities because we want to spend more time with them. But maintaining that at balance. Now, we're not saying going out drinking with your friends until 4 a.m. or dancing with the girls all weekend long in Vegas is probably going to be acceptable. You're probably going to hit some, bumps along the way if you kind of keep up either one of those behaviors. But discuss it. Set things that are realistic and make sure you both can agree and move forward from there. But no matter what you do, it's going to be mutually agreed upon. And then you should regularly revisit and adjust those boundaries and see where the relationship evolves and how to help prevent any conflicts in the future, especially if they're coming from the form or the realm of jealousy. Now, what about reinforcing trust? Now, this becomes crucial for addressing jealousy, especially when it rears its head in maybe the beginning or middle of a relationship. And what it does is deepens the connection between two people. Building and maintaining trust involves consistent actions and affirmations of commitment. Regular check-ins can be an effective way to address any emerging concerns and reaffirm a partner's commitment to the relationship. Maybe a simple gesture here, a verbal hello, or you look nice, or you made my day today, or I've been thinking about you. Some sort of small act of reassurance. These things can really reaffirm trust. Now, for example, here with a dom, you might make the effort to show appreciation to their submissives, and affirm their commitment about how well they've done in training and how proud you are. Or a submissive can express their trust and confidence, for example, by saying, how much they appreciate all the work the dom has gone into to setting up all the tasks and how much they look forward to them. Right? By continually demonstrating trust and commitment, both people can address the underlying insecurities and build really a stronger and more resilient dynamic. Which, is a final great segue into this. And that's cultivating emotional resilience. Now, resilience is something I talk about a lot. I think it's something that not a lot of people have, and we have to work at really building it, because emotional resilience is another key strategy for maintaining jealousy. And it involves developing the ability to cope with and recover from any emotional challenges. And we have to learn that on our own, and we have to be proactive about that on our own. We have to engage in practices that do boost our own emotional well-being, such as mindfulness. We have to reflect on ourselves. We have to hold ourselves accountable. And we have to worry about personal responsibility. We want to engage in hobbies that promote our own personal growth, as well as joint activities with our partners. Right? We should be able to encourage our partners to build their own emotional resilience and let them learn how to deal with, situations that come up, even jealousy, by effectively and maintaining their own balance within. We can't just be the crutch for them to fix everything. Again, this goes back to what I said earlier. When you both come into a dynamic, you had outside interests. Maybe you were a book reader and you went to a book club once a month, or you did wine tastings. We all fell in love with these aspects of our partners when we met them. And then all of a sudden we're trying to change them because we're like, oh, I don't really want you drinking anymore. You drink a lot. Well, we never really thought that like 8 weeks ago. What it is that we want them more to ourselves and we don't want to share them. And then there might be an underlying fear. Now, I'm not saying, if they are drinking more, that's a whole different show for another time, and I'm not going to go into that. But you can put in any other example, playing sports, if they've always gone out with their boys on the weekend and they play a pickup game of football or hockey or basketball or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden, you don't want them to do that anymore, that could be problematic. Or maybe every weekend you went out with the girls and had coffee and brunch, and you caught up, or, even once a month, and you caught up and talked about everything that you've been doing in your lives, and at that point, who you're meeting and how your jobs are going, and now your partner doesn't want you doing that. You're going to lose a little bit of that autonomy of who you are. You're going to lose that social interaction that's so crucial for us, right? So just keep these things in mind. It's really important here to remember that while jealousy is a challenging emotion, it is a natural part of the human emotional spectrum. It does signal a deeper issue or potentially unmet needs, but it does offer an opportunity for growth and deeper understanding inside of ourselves and our dynamics. Dealing with jealousy effectively involves more than just managing feelings. It really is about fostering a relationship where both of us feel secure and valued. And by focusing on open communication and setting clear boundaries and reinforcing trust, you create a foundation that supports your emotional well-being and mutual respect. If you embrace jealousy as a signal to engage more deeply with your partner and your own emotions, it does become this invitation to address the underlying insecurities that you may have from the past and to strengthen your bond through empathy and understanding. The goal here isn't to eliminate jealousy entirely, but to navigate it constructively. That turns potential conflicts into opportunities for growth and knowledge, and makes you emotionally more resilient. Now, in every relationship, whether it's BDSM or beyond, the key to handling jealousy lies in the commitment to maintaining a supportive and communicative partnership with our other half, even ourselves. And by addressing these feelings with care and a little bit of intention, you can build a stronger and more resilient way to move forward, not just inside of a dynamic, but with yourself. Because I can tell you right now, if you're jealous with one person, you might end up being jealous in your next relationship and not knowing why. And eventually that gets around, and nobody wants to date somebody who's consistently jealous. All right? Another thing that I didn't mention as a tactic is, if you really need to, speak to someone. There are specialists that work in that area. Address it. Contact a professional and consider sitting down and exploring a little bit of your personal history to start getting an understanding as to why. I want to thank my new listeners. I've gotten a whole bunch of you lately, especially from the Middle East again. I'm very curious. I've been having a few conversations. So if you are new to the show for the first time, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. If you're following me on Spotify, right, put me inside of your playlists. If you do follow me on Spotify, please rank me 5 stars. This way other people can find me. I can keep the show free for now. I can only tell you that on your Android phone, if you have an Android, you got to go to the Kink Perspective page. There's three little dots. You hit that, clicks rate my show, hit it 5 stars. It does. I don't want to make any of my shows behind a paywall. I like to keep these free for you all. But if you do want to support what I do, I would greatly appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and effort to put these episodes out for you. There is a donation link in my profile. You can click there. Anything big or small, it's always helpful and very greatly appreciated. You can also let me know if you want me to say thank you directly to you on the air. If you are looking for a lifestyle therapist or just a therapist in general that deals with trauma, I do specialize in that. Please feel free to reach out to me on my website, www.enhanced-mind.com. You can find that in my description below as well. But let me know what you thought about today's show. Have you ever dealt with a partner who's been jealous? Have you ever confronted and dealt with jealousy yourself? How did you deal with it? How did it manifest for you? I'd really like to know and hear your thoughts more. You know, jealousy is quite different for us inside of the lifestyle and how we navigate it, and the effects, and even inside of jealousy, inside of the community itself, can be something to contend with. Until next time, everybody, be safe, stay kinky.